The hum of the HVAC system was a low, constant drone in the otherwise silent house. Recessed lighting cast a soft glow on the polished granite countertops, reflecting a world of sterile perfection. Everything in the open-plan living space of our McLean, Virginia home was immaculate. Obsessed specialty cleaner tomorrow, or I'll just buy you a new one. My voice was a reedy whisper. I knew what was coming next. Kevin stood with his arms crossed, his gaze like ice. It was a look I knew well. Beside him, his mother, Eleanor, and his sister, Jessica, were perched on the custom Italian leather sofa. They both watched me with a familiar mix of disdain and pity. Buy a new one, Kevin scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. With what? Amelia? Your little teacher's salary? Do you have any idea what this costs? You need to stay in your lane. His words were needles, piercing the fragile bubble of self-worth I tried to protect. I've been teaching elementary school for nearly 10 years. I love my job, my students. But in his eyes, it was a quaint, embarrassing profession. Now, Kevin, don't be so harsh, Eleanor said, her voice smooth as silk. I looked up, a flicker of hope in my chest, but her next words extinguished it completely. Amelia is just clumsy. She doesn't understand how to care for fine things. You need to be more mindful in the future. Dear, this isn't Kmart. It wasn't a defense. It was an affirmation of my incompetence. Exactly. If she can't even handle a simple chore, what good is she? Jessica added, laughing under her breath. She sat with her legs crossed, examining her manicure as if I were a piece of furniture. A woman who hadn't worked a day in her life, who lived off her brother's generosity, was judging me. I am so sick of your uselessness. Amy. Kevin's voice rose, cracking the quiet. We've been married for 3 years. What have you ever done that's made me proud? Besides coasting on my last name? He stalked towards me, his face a mask of fury. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh, a sharp pain shooting up to my shoulder. Kevin, you're hurting me, I whimpered. Hurting you? What about the humiliation I feel? Being married to someone so incompetent? Doesn't that hurt me more? And then it came. His open palm swung, connecting with my cheek with a sickening crack. The sound was deafening, louder than the HVAC, louder than anything I'd ever heard in that silent house. My head snapped to the side, and I stumbled, collapsing onto the cold, unforgiving marble floor. A fiery sting radiated across the left side of my face. My ear was ringing, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the shattering of my heart. I slowly turned my head, tears blurring my vision. I looked at my husband, the man I had once loved, the man I had promised my life to. Then I looked at his mother and sister. I saw no shock, no pity, no attempt to intervene. What I saw was a smile, a faint, cruel smirk playing on their lips. It was a look of smug satisfaction, of vindication, as if this was the performance they had been waiting for all along. In that moment, my already fractured heart broke into a million irreparable pieces. Jessica's soft, mocking titter floated into the ringing in my ears. Well, maybe now you'll learn. My world imploded right there, on the cold marble floor of the house I once thought was our home. I had no one. And then, the solid oak front door opened without a sound. No knock, no doorbell. A tall, imposing figure in a crisp white shirt and simple black slacks stepped inside. His face was impassive, but his eyes were sharp and cold as glaciers. My father, retired 4-star General David Peterson. Flanking him were two large men in dark suits. They were not soldiers in uniform, but they carried themselves with the same disciplined stillness. They were my father's most trusted security detail, former Special Forces operators who now served him in his civilian life. Their presence sucked the remaining air out of the room. Kevin, Eleanor, and Jessica went pale. The smirks vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock and panic. The arrogance they wore just moments before evaporated, leaving only raw fear. They stood frozen, like statues. My father didn't look at them. He didn't say a word to my husband's family. His gaze was fixed on me. His daughter, crumpled on the floor. For a fleeting second, the ice in his eyes melted into a look of profound pain before becoming impassive once more. He walked towards me, his steps slow, measured, each one resonating with a quiet, unshakable authority. Amelia, he said, his voice a low, steady rumble. Get up. Pack a bag. You're coming home. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a comfort. It was a command. An order filled with the protection I hadn't realized I was starving for. The tears I had been holding back burst forth. A silent, hot flood. I shakily pushed myself to my feet, my legs trembling. I nodded, unable to speak, and didn't dare look at anyone else. My father gave a slight nod to one of his men. The man stepped forward. "Allow me." "Ma'am," he said, his voice respectful. I followed him out the grand staircase like a ghost, leaving my father to stand alone with that family in the suffocating silence of the living room. I don't know what he said to them, or if he said anything at all. I only knew that my rescue had finally come. It wasn't a loud, dramatic cavalry charge. It was a silent, overwhelming show of force. A quiet declaration that General Peterson's daughter was not someone to be trifled with. His wall of honor was finally being built around me. I quickly threw my essentials into a small suitcase. My hand still shook, but a strange calm was settling over me. The security aide carried the bag for me as we descended the stairs. When I reached the bottom, the scene was unchanged. Kevin was white as a sheet. Eleanor was frozen on the sofa. Jessica hid behind her mother. My father stood in the same spot, a pillar of granite. He didn't look at them. He only looked at me. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's go." With just those two words, he turned and walked towards the door. The other aide held it open for him. Then for me. There were no goodbyes. No arguments. It was like I was walking out of a stranger's house. The sound of the heavy door closing behind me was the sound of a chapter of my life ending. I climbed into my father's black, unassuming but clearly armored SUV. As we pulled away from the manicured lawns of the upscale neighborhood, I left the gilded cage that had almost destroyed me in the rearview mirror. On the entire drive home to Arlington, my father said nothing. He just sat beside me, staring straight ahead. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a blank slate. The red mark on my cheek still throbbed, but my tears had dried. I watched the scenery change from sprawling mansions to the familiar, tree-lined streets leading to my childhood home. My father's house was a large but understated brick colonial. It lacked the sterile flash of Kevin's house, but it radiated a sense of warmth and security. The polished dark wood furniture, the family photos on the mantel, the faint, clean scent of cedar and old books. This was my world. Our longtime housekeeper, Maria, came out to greet us with a smile, but it vanished the moment she saw the angry red mark on my face. "Miss Amy," she gasped. My father gave her a warning look, then spoke in his usual calm tone. "Maria, please get Amy's old room ready, and bring the first aid kit." "Yes, General," she said, scurrying away. I sank into the old sofa I used to nap on as a child. A profound sense of safety washed over me. I was here. I was home. I was safe. My father brought me a glass of ice water. He handed it to me, then sat in the armchair opposite me. "How bad does it hurt?" he asked. It was the first question he'd asked since we left. I shook my head. Not as much as my heart. He gave a slow, deliberate nod, his eyes reflecting a pain that mirrored my own. He had always been a man of few words. His love was never shown in flowery speeches, but in unwavering action. Maria brought the first aid kit. He took it from her and began to gently apply a cold compress and soothing cream to my cheek. His touch was so tender it made my eyes well up again. "How did you know, Dad?" I finally asked. "How did you know I needed help?" He paused, looking me straight in the eye. "A father's instinct," he said simply. "And Maria called. She said you hadn't made your daily call to her." I had a bad feeling. I called Maria every day after school. It was a small ritual. Today, because of the shirt, I had forgotten. That tiny break in routine was enough to alert him. That was the kind of attention to detail my husband had never, ever shown. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bed, the room filled with memories. I closed my eyes, but the day's events played on a loop. I thought back to when I first met Kevin. He had seemed so charming, so respectful. He said he admired my dedication as a teacher and was impressed by my strong family background. We dated for 2 years. Everything seemed perfect. He never raised his voice, never showed a hint of aggression. But looking back now, I could see the red flags I had chosen to ignore. Soon after we were married, he began making snide remarks about my family. "Why does your father need security with him all the time? It's so pretentious." Or, "I don't get the appeal of these old military neighborhoods. So rigid." At the time, I thought he was just adjusting. I tried to explain. But deep down, it was his own insecurity, his own inferiority complex, speaking. Then came the slow, creeping control. Why do you have to call home every day? You're a grown woman. Just come straight home after work. Why do you need to go out with your teacher friends? It's pointless. You don't make much. You should learn to save more. Stop buying things. I complied, thinking it was my duty as a good wife. I saw my friends less. I stopped buying small things for myself. I poured all my energy into him and his house. Eleanor and Jessica were the accelerants on the fire of my misery. They would drop by unannounced and criticize everything. Why is the house a mess? What kind of homemaker are you? This soup tastes like dishwater. Can't you cook? Look how thin Kevin is getting. You must be running him ragged. Every word was designed to diminish me, to crush my spirit. I endured it, not wanting to cause trouble for Kevin. When I tried to talk to him about it, he always defended them. My mother just means well. Jessica is just joking. You're too sensitive. He never once protected me. He threw me to the wolves. Day by day, I began to feel worthless, invisible. I wasn't Amelia anymore. I was just Kevin's wife, Eleanor's daughter-in-law, Jessica's sister-in-law. The violence didn't start with a slap. It started with words, with actions, with neglect. Today's slap was just the tip of an iceberg of cruelty submerged in an ocean of my tolerance. I was a fool for letting it go on this long. I was too weak, choosing submission over fighting back. I got out of bed and went to the window, looking at the lights from the other houses in my father's quiet neighborhood. Here, everyone respected my father, respected our family. Yet I had allowed a man and his family to trample all over my dignity. It was time to stop being the tragic heroine. It was time to learn to protect myself, just as my father had been trying to protect me my whole life. The next morning, I woke with a dull ache in my face and my heart. The angry red mark from the slap had morphed into a faint purple bruise on my cheek. I looked at my reflection and saw a tired, sad woman. But there was something else in her eyes, to a flicker of resolve I hadn't seen before. Downstairs, my father was at the dining table reading the Wall Street Journal, his daily ritual. He looked up, his eyes glancing at my bruise for a fraction of a second before looking away. He said nothing, but I knew he was furious and hurting for me. Eat, honey. Maria made your favorite shrimp and grits. It was a simple sentence, but in that moment, it was the greatest expression of love and care I could imagine. I sat and ate quietly, the familiar comfort food a balm to my soul. My father continued to read, the silence between us comfortable, full of unspoken understanding. After breakfast, I took a deep breath and said what I'd been thinking all night. Dad, I want a divorce. The words came out more easily than I'd expected, as if they had been waiting on my tongue for years. My father folded his newspaper and set it down, looking at me directly. There was no surprise in his expression, as if he already knew this was my decision. Are you sure? He asked, his voice even. I'm sure, I replied, my voice firm. I've had enough. I can't go back to that life. He nodded slowly. Good. If that's your decision, I'll take care of it. Before we could discuss it further, the sound of a car pulling up outside broke the morning calm. Maria came in, her face troubled. General, Mr. Ashford and his family are here. They wish to see you. My stomach dropped. I wasn't ready to face them. My father looked at me. Do you want to see them? If not, I'll send them away. I hesitated. But then a new strength rose within me. I had to face this. I had to be strong. I'll see them, I said. He nodded. Maria, show them into the living room. And only the living room. A few moments later, Kevin, Eleanor, and Jessica walked in. My father's simple, traditional home seemed to make them uncomfortable, out of their element. Eleanor and Jessica glanced around with barely concealed condescension. Kevin rushed straight to me and dropped to his knees on the hardwood floor. It was a gesture so dramatic, so unexpected. It felt like a scene from a bad movie. Amy, I'm so sorry. He sobbed, grabbing my hands. I was wrong. I'm a monster. I was just so stressed from work, I lost control. Please, forgive me. Please, Amy, come home. A new act in the play had begun, the remorseful husband. I pulled my hands away, a wave of disgust washing over me. His tears didn't soften my heart. They only illuminated the depth of his performance. Get up, Kevin. Don't make a scene. People will talk, I said, my voice flat. I glanced over and saw my father, standing with his arms crossed, watching the drama unfold with an impassive face. Oh, for heaven's sake. Kevin, get up, Eleanor snapped. She helped her son to his feet, then turned to me with a scolding look. Really? Amelia, this is how families are. There are bumps in the road. A marriage is about give and take. A woman needs to be patient, to support her husband, not run home to her father over every little thing. It's embarrassing. She hadn't come to apologize. She had come to lecture me, to put me back in my place. Embarrassing? I asked. And this time, my voice was clear and strong. Is it more embarrassing than your son hitting his wife in front of his mother and sister, while you both sit there and laugh? Is that not more embarrassing? My words wiped the smirk off Eleanor's face. She clearly hadn't expected me to fight back. You? Jessica pointed a finger at me. How dare you speak to my mother that way? That's enough. My father's voice cut through the air. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that silenced everyone. He moved to stand beside me. A solid, unbreachable wall. Are you here to apologize to my daughter? He asked, his gaze pinning them to the spot. Or are you here to cause more trouble? The power in his stare made them tremble. Sir, we are truly here to apologize, Kevin said quickly. I was wrong. Sir, truly. I promise it will never happen again. I love Amy so much. I can't live without her. Please, sir, just give me one more chance. He was appealing to my father, not realizing that for a man like my father, his chance had ended the moment he'd raised his hand to me. My father didn't answer him. He turned to me instead. Amelia, he said, his voice softening. The decision is entirely yours. Whatever you choose, I will respect it. He looked me deep in the eyes. But remember, no matter what happens, this is always your home. You will always have me. His words were a healing balm. They reminded me I wasn't alone. I had a family that loved and supported me. I took a deep breath and turned to face Kevin. Kevin, I appreciate the apology, but right now, I'm not ready to make any decisions. I chose not to mention the divorce. I needed time and peace. I need some time to myself, to think about everything. Of course. Amy. Of course. Kevin said eagerly. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I'll prove to you I can change. I love you, Amy. He made a move to step closer, but a single, sharp look from my father stopped him in his tracks. His family lingered for another moment, but seeing they couldn't sway me, they finally retreated. After they left, silence returned to the house. Why didn't you tell him you want a divorce? My father asked. I just wanted to buy some time. Dad, I don't want them harassing me while I get the paperwork in order. He nodded in understanding. Smart. Very strategic. I'll contact a lawyer for you tomorrow. The best one. Thank you. Dad, don't thank me. It's my job. He patted my shoulder gently. I knew this war wasn't over. It was just the beginning. A legal battle was coming. But this time, I wasn't afraid. Because I knew that on this battlefield, I had the best commander in the world on my side. And his wall of honor would never, ever fall. The next few days of my father's house were a period of healing. I spent my time reading, helping Maria in her small garden, and sleeping soundly for the first time in years. The bruise on my face faded, but the wound in my heart remained. I knew I couldn't hide in this safe harbor forever. Kevin called me every day, multiple times a day. His texts were a constant stream of apologies, pleas, and promises of change. I didn't respond, but I read them all. A part of me, a small, foolish part, still felt a bond, a lingering thread of the love we once shared. I remembered the good times, the man he used to be, the vows we made. I'm a teacher. I'm taught to believe in second chances, to believe that people can make mistakes and become better. The thought gnawed at me, warring with the fresh pain and fear. Maybe I should give him one last chance. If he hurt me again, at least I would know I had tried everything, and I could leave with no regrets. One evening, I decided to talk to my father about it. We were sitting in the gazebo by the small pond in his backyard. Dad, if I were to try again just one more time, what would you say? I asked quietly, not daring to meet his gaze. He didn't answer right away. He sat still, watching the setting sun reflect on the water. His silence was heavier than any words of disapproval. I told you, I will respect your decision. He finally said, his voice flat. But I want you to ask yourself, honestly, are you going back because you still love him? Or because you're afraid of the word failure? His question was an arrow straight to my heart. It was the truth I hadn't dared to admit to myself. Everyone makes mistakes in judgment. Amelia, I have. He continued. Admitting a mistake and walking away is not failure. It's courage. The courage to choose a better life for yourself. He turned and looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. But if you still feel you have to try, I won't stop you. Just remember, the door to this house is always open. His words made me cry. I knew he disagreed, but he still respected my autonomy. It made me feel even more guilty. Still, I had to try, just so I wouldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. The next day, I called Kevin. I told him I was coming home. He was ecstatic, his voice bright with a hope that sounded genuine. He picked me up from my father's house, a bouquet of my favorite white lilies in his hand. He looked a little thinner, but he was trying so hard to be cheerful. I'm the happiest man in the world. Amy, thank you for giving me this chance. When I stepped back into that house, the atmosphere felt different. Eleanor and Jessica greeted me with smiles, but they were strained and insincere. It's good to have you back, dear, Eleanor said. The house needs a woman's touch. It's a disaster with just the men. It was a welcome wrapped in a barb, but I chose to ignore it. Kevin played the part of the ideal husband. He carried my bag. He helped me unpack. He even tried to cook dinner, though it ended up a burnt, inedible mess. He hugged me, kissed my cheek, and said I love you more in one day than he had in the past 3 years combined. But it all felt wrong, suffocating. It was like watching a play where all the actors were trying too hard. I had returned, but I was not the same person. I hadn't come back as a submissive, foolish wife. I had come back as an observer, with a weary heart and watchful eyes. I smiled. I made small talk. But inside, I was assessing everything. I knew this was the final chance, and I would not allow myself to be hurt a second time. Meanwhile, back at the house in Arlington, shortly after I left, General Peterson called his trusted aide, Frank Miller, into his private study. It was a simple room, a large mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and tactical maps on the wall. It smelled of discipline and quiet power. Frank, my father began, his voice decisive. Sir, Frank replied, standing at attention. I want everything you can find on Kevin Ashford, my daughter's husband. He took off his reading glasses and polished them slowly, but his gaze was sharp as a razor. Financials, bank accounts, credit cards, work history, personal associations, everything. I want to know everything. Understood, sir, Frank said, without a single question. This is to be done with the utmost discretion. I don't want Amelia to know. I don't want to worry her. Of course, sir. I'll be a ghost. I have faith in you, my father said. You have 1 week. Dismissed. Frank gave a sharp nod and left the room as quietly as he had entered. General Peterson put his glasses back on and stared out the window, a deep worry hidden behind his stoic mask. He might respect his daughter's decision, but as a father and a soldier, he never trusted promises without proof. He would do whatever it took to protect his daughter, whether she knew it or not. That night at Kevin's house, we had dinner together. It was painfully awkward. Kevin tried to tell jokes, but no one really laughed. Eleanor bragged about her son and made passive-aggressive jabs at me. You're lucky Kevin is so forgiving. Most men wouldn't take back a wife who ran out on him. I hope you've learned your lesson about a wife's duties. I just smiled and ate my food, which tasted like ash. I felt like a prisoner under constant surveillance. The house that was supposed to be mine felt like enemy territory. I already knew. Coming back here was the biggest mistake I could have made. But since I had chosen to walk back onto this battlefield, I had to survive and find the truth. Late that night, as I feigned sleep, Kevin slipped out of bed and went into the master bathroom to take a call. He didn't close the door all the way. I could hear his hushed, frantic whispers. I couldn't make out all of it, but I clearly heard the words, "When do you need the payment?" And "I don't have it." And "Just give me a little more time." His voice was strained with a desperation I had never heard before. My heart began to pound. What was going on? What secrets was Kevin hiding? And where would they lead me? That night, I didn't sleep at all. After the night I overheard Kevin's suspicious phone call, I could no longer play the part of the doting wife. A seed of suspicion had been planted, and it was growing, consuming my thoughts. I woke up with a new mission. I had to find out the truth. I was no longer Amy, the sweet school teacher. I was a reluctant detective in my own home. I started by observing him closely. By day, Kevin continued his performance as a perfect husband, bringing me breakfast, speaking in honeyed tones. But his eyes were haunted by a worry he couldn't hide. He was constantly, nervously checking his phone, which he now guarded like a national secret. My chance came one morning when he went to take a shower, accidentally leaving his phone on the nightstand. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I snatched it, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock the screen. Of course, it was password protected. I tried his birthday. My birthday. Our anniversarial rung. Despair began to set in. Time was running out. Then, an idea struck me. Kevin was deeply narcissistic. His password wouldn't be about us. It would be about him. I remembered seeing his employee ID number on his company badge. I typed it in. It worked. The screen unlocked, revealing a grid of apps. I had seconds. I went straight for the call log. There were dozens of calls from an unfamiliar, blocked number, at all hours. I quickly scribbled the number down on a tiny slip of paper. Next, I opened his messaging app. Most of the chats were work-related, but one was pinned to the top, with a strange contact name, Big Tony Collections. My blood ran cold. Collections. I opened the chat. It was filled with desperate voice messages from Kevin. Tony, please, just give me another week. I'm trying to get the money. Don't send anyone to the house. My wife will get suspicious. I swear. As soon as I get the next big commission, I'll pay you back in full. It was all there. Kevin was in debt, and it was clearly to a loan shark. The sound of the shower stopped. I quickly closed the app, locked the screen, and placed the phone exactly where I found it. Just as he walked out of the bathroom, I pretended to be brushing my hair at the vanity, trying to keep my expression neutral, my breathing even. He suspected nothing. He smiled at my reflection in the mirror before getting dressed for work. His smile now looked grotesque, a hollow mask. The moment he left, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I went to his home office, a room he had always forbidden me from touching. I started pulling open drawers, searching through files. Finally, in a locked desk drawer, I found what I was looking for. Using a bobby pin from my hair, I jiggled the cheap lock like I'd seen in movies. To my astonishment, it sprang open. Inside was a mountain of debt. Statements from a half-dozen credit cards, all maxed out. Letters from banks threatening legal action. He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. What had he spent it on? Designer clothes, luxury watches, and receipts from lavish dinners at restaurants he'd never taken me to. But the most damning discovery was at the bottom of the pile, printouts from an online gambling site, an online baccarat table. He had lost a fortune, close to 6 figures. In less than a year, I sank to the floor. The papers clutched in my hand. The successful businessman, the man of taste and means, it was all a facade. A house of cards built on lies. Underneath, he was just a desperate gambling addict drowning in debt. The last vestiges of love I felt for him evaporated, replaced by a cold, bitter pity. It all made sense now. The obsession with his public image was to maintain his credit. The need to belittle me was to make himself feel superior, to mask his own financial failures. And his desperate pleas for me to come back weren't about love. He needed me here as a shield, a prop to show his creditors that his life was stable. The violence on that day wasn't a momentary lapse. It was the eruption of stress and fear from a man about to be exposed. And he had taken it out on the person he thought was weakest, the person who would never fight back. Tears of shame streamed down my face. How long had I let this man deceive me? Why had I suffered to preserve this lie of a marriage? I gathered all the documents, taking pictures of each one with my phone. I locked the drawer, put everything back exactly as I had found it, leaving no trace. I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't wait for him to hurt me again. I wouldn't wait for my father to rescue me. This time, I would end this myself. I called the lawyer my father had recommended and scheduled a private meeting for the next day. I laid out the entire story, presenting him with the mountain of evidence I had collected. The lawyer looked at me with newfound respect. "Ms. Peterson," he said, "you are incredibly strong. This evidence is irrefutable. We can file for divorce immediately, on grounds of fraud and abuse. We can also seek significant alimony. I don't want his money. I said, my voice hard as steel. I just want my freedom. I want to be completely severed from that man and his family as quickly as possible. Understood, he said, nodding. We'll begin proceedings at once. I walked out of that law office feeling like a 10-ton weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The fog that had clouded my life was finally beginning to clear. I looked up at the sky and took a deep, clean breath. It was the air of a new day. A day when I would finally become myself again. That evening, I played the part of the hollow wife one last time. I made dinner, set the table, and waited for him to come home. I had to confront him. I had to let him know the show was over. I wasn't afraid anymore. I now possessed the most powerful weapon of all, the truth, and the truth was about to set me free. While I was steeling myself for the evening's confrontation, back in Arlington, Frank Miller was presenting his findings to General Peterson. He stood before my father's desk, a thick file in his hand. I have the complete intelligence, sir, Frank stated, his voice flat and professional. My father nodded for him to proceed. As of this morning, Kevin Ashford has over $300,000 in unsecured credit card and personal loan debt. We've also identified significant debt to an unlicensed lending organization. The exact figure is hard to pin down. My father's brow furrowed, but he remained silent. The primary source of this debt is excessive spending and a severe online gambling addiction, specifically baccarat. He's lost nearly $200,000 in the last 12 months. Frank opened the file and laid a document on the desk. Furthermore, sir, my inquiries into his employment at the investment firm have uncovered highly suspect activities. Go on, my father said. Mr. Ashford has been systematically embezzling company funds. He inflates project expenses and diverts the surplus into a private account. The preliminary number we can trace is over $500,000. This time, my father took his glasses off and placed them on the desk. His gaze turned from concern to glacial. Gambling was a personal failing. Embezzlement was a felony. It was an act without honor. And the worst of it, sir, Frank continued, is that the house, their primary residence, has been mortgaged to its absolute limit. He is currently 2 months behind on payments. The bank is preparing to file for foreclosure. Everything Frank reported mirrored my own discoveries, but was far worse. Kevin wasn't just in debt. He was on the verge of total collapse and was a criminal. His motivation for marrying Miss Amelia appears to be, in part, a long-term contingency plan. A source close to him stated that he believed, if things ever got too bad, his 4-star general father-in-law would never let his daughter's husband go to prison or declare bankruptcy. It would be too embarrassing for the family. At the end of Frank's report, a terrifying silence fell over the study. My father's anger wasn't explosive. It was a cold, quiet rage that radiated from him like a polar vortex. Good, my father said. One single word. Very good. He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. Get the car ready. I'm going to pick up my daughter. Simultaneously, at the house in McLean, I was waiting at the dining table. The Last Supper. When Kevin walked in, he was surprised to see the table set so beautifully, and me smiling at him. What's a special occasion? Amy, you're in a good mood, he said with that fake smile I could now see right through. Nothing special. I just wanted to have a serious talk about our future. We sat and ate. He was relaxed, completely unsuspecting. He prattled on about work, bragging about successes that didn't exist. I listened quietly, waiting for the right moment. After the main course, I stood up to get something from the counter. It wasn't dessert. It was a file of documents I had copied. I placed it on the table in front of him. What's this, Amy? He asked, confused. Why don't you open it and see? I said, my voice even. He opened the file. The second his eyes fell on the first credit card statement, his face changed. The smile vanished, replaced by a ghastly pallor. He flipped through the pages, seeing the gambling receipts, the collection notices. His hands began to shake. Amy, where did you get this? He snarled, his polite facade gone in an instant. Does it matter where I got it? I asked calmly. What matters is that it's all true. Isn't it? No, it's not. These are forgeries. Someone is trying to frame me. Really? I picked up my phone and pressed play on the audio file I had secretly recorded the other night. Tony, please, just give me another week. I'm trying to get the money. His own desperate voice filling the room made him go ashen. He stared at me, his eyes blazing with pure hatred. You conniving bitch. You recorded me? He swept the file off the table, sending papers scattering across the floor. He shot to his feet, pointing at me. Yes, I'm in debt. So what? Do you know why? It's because of you. Trying to keep up with your family's expectations. Buying this big house. Driving a nice car. All to impress your precious father. To be worthy of a general's daughter. He was twisting everything. Trying to lay the blame at my feet. Stop it. Kevin. Stop lying to yourself. I shot back. You didn't do any of this for me. You did it for yourself. To cover your own insecurities. You were jealous of my family. You hated feeling inferior to them. Didn't you? My words hit their mark. Yes. He screamed. His voice raw. Yes. I hate your perfect military family. I hate your father, who acts like he's God Almighty. And I hate you. Playing the sweet, innocent princess while you were always looking down on me. I can't take it anymore. The mask was finally completely gone. All that was left was the ugly, twisted face of envy, cowardice, and rage. Any love, any pity, any connection I ever felt for him died in that instant. I looked at him with empty eyes, as if he were a pathetic stranger. He lunged toward me, and in that exact moment, the front door swung open. My father stepped inside, flanked by his 2 aides. His gaze flickered past the raging Kevin, and settled on me. Come home, Amelia. The same words, in a different scenario, but with the exact same meaning. I nodded, and walked straight towards my father, not once looking back at the man I was leaving behind. His game was well and truly over. The arrival of my father and his aides froze Kevin mid-lunge. His rage was instantly encased in a block of ice by the oppressive, authoritative atmosphere. He glared at my father, his eyes a mixture of fury and terror. Eleanor and Jessica, drawn by the shouting, rushed down the stairs, seeing my father in their home. They blanched, rooted to the spot. I walked past the scattered papers, past the man who was once my husband, and came to a stop behind my father. It was the safest place on earth. My father didn't spare a word for them. He just turned his head slightly toward me. Go get the rest of your things. I'll wait here, he commanded. I nodded and started for the stairs. Wait, Kevin yelled. You can't just leave. You're my wife. He moved to block my path, but my father's 2 aides instantly stepped between us. They didn't touch him. They just stood there, 2 immovable human walls of silent intimidation. Stay out of this. This is between a husband and wife. Kevin snarled at them, his voice trembling. My father turned slowly to face him. You are not a husband, he said, his voice dangerously cold. You are just a man who puts his hands on my daughter, and from this moment forward, you will never touch her again. This is my house. You have no right to trespass. Kevin blustered. Really? My father raised an eyebrow. This house? The one the bank is about to foreclose on? The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. He staggered back. You? How could you know that? I know everything. Kevin, my father said, using his first name for the first time. I know about the gambling debts. I know about the embezzlement at your company. I know everything you've done. Each sentence was a hammer blow, breaking Kevin down. He grew paler and paler, until he finally collapsed onto the sofa, completely defeated. Eleanor and Jessica stared, their eyes wide with horror. What? Kevin, is this true? His mother shrieked. You embezzled money? The house is being repossessed. Jessica wailed. The secrets Kevin had fought so hard to protect were now laid bare before his entire family. The perfect world they had built was crumbling around them. I walked upstairs, ignoring the sounds of their family imploding below. I could hear Eleanor sobbing, Jessica screaming at her brother. The family that had seemed so unified in their cruelty was now tearing itself apart in crisis. I packed the last of my things, my eyes falling on our wedding photo on the nightstand. I picked it up, looked at my own happy, naive face, and then placed it face down. That woman was gone forever. When I came back downstairs, chaos still reigned. My father stood impassively amidst the storm, waiting for me. I'm ready. Dad. Good. Let's go. He led me out of that house for the second and final time. As I stepped through the door, I heard Kevin's voice, a desperate, pathetic roar from behind me. You'll regret this. Amelia, you and your father will regret what you've done to me. I didn't look back. I just kept walking forward. Towards my freedom. Back at my father's house. I felt truly home. That night, he came to my room to talk. The lawyer will call you tomorrow. He'll handle the entire divorce. You don't have to worry about a thing. And what about his company? I asked. Worried not for him, but for the fallout. That is not your concern. My father replied evenly. He broke the law. He will face the consequences of his actions. The next day, I learned what my father had done. He hadn't used force or overt power. He had acted quietly, but with surgical precision. He had placed a single phone call to the CEO of Kevin's company, an old acquaintance. He didn't mention my personal situation. He simply stated that he had credible evidence of significant embezzlement by a senior manager, and that it would be a shame if such a scandal became public. He offered the CEO a choice: handle the problem internally and decisively, or risk the reputational damage of a public investigation. The choice for a shrewd businessman was obvious. Kevin was called into an emergency board meeting. Faced with irrefutable evidence, he was fired on the spot. The company announced it would be pressing full criminal charges. At the same time, my lawyer officially filed for divorce. We asked for nothing. No alimony. No division of assets. We just wanted a clean, fast break. When Kevin received the termination letter and the divorce papers on the same day, his world completely collapsed. He called me from burner phones, his messages alternating between tearful begging and vicious threats. I blocked every number. He tried to come to my father's house but was politely but firmly turned away by the military police at the gate. He was completely excised from my life. The bad news for his family didn't stop there. When the bank learned he was unemployed, the foreclosure process was expedited. An eviction notice was served, giving them 30 days to vacate the premises. Eleanor and Jessica were frantic. The source of their lavish lifestyle was gone. The sports cars were repossessed. They began selling off their designer bags and jewelry to pay for groceries. From high society doyens, they were reduced to common people facing common struggles. They called me, crying, screaming, blaming me for ruining their lives. I listened with a calm heart. I felt no satisfaction, but I also felt no pity. It was simply the law of cause and effect. They had laughed on the day I was beaten. Now they cried on the day their lives fell apart. It was, in its own way, a form of justice. The collapse of Kevin Ashford was faster and more total than anyone could have imagined. In less than a month, he went from a rising executive to an unemployed criminal facing bankruptcy. My father's true power wasn't in his uniform or his rank. It was in the network of trust and respect he had built over a lifetime. He had merely tugged on a single thread, and Kevin's entire web had unraveled. I lived peacefully under my father's care and began teaching again. My colleagues and principal were wonderfully supportive, knowing only that I was going through a difficult divorce. Being with the children, seeing their bright, innocent smiles, was the best therapy. It reminded me that I had value, that I had a purpose. In contrast, the Ashford family was weathering a hurricane. With no money from Kevin, Eleanor and Jessica's lives of leisure came to an abrupt end. Kevin himself sank into a deep depression, locking himself in his room, drinking heavily, and blaming everyone but himself for his downfall. The cowardice hidden beneath his aggressive mask was now on full display. Their family bonds, already fragile, shattered completely. I heard from Maria, who heard from a friend who worked in their old neighborhood, that the house was a war zone. Eleanor no longer coddled her son. She berated him daily. I wish I never had a son like you. You're a failure. Kevin would scream back. You're the one who taught me that appearances were all that mattered. Jessica would wail about her own misfortune, and Kevin would fire back that she had never contributed anything. The love they shared was transactional, based on money and status. When those were gone, so was the love. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. Ms. Peterson, the divorce is finalized. You are now officially a free woman. I hung up and let out a long, slow breath. The word free had never sounded so sweet. I walked to my window and looked out at the green lawns of my father's neighborhood. I felt like a bird finally released from its cage. But then came a twist I never saw coming. That evening, my father called me into his study. His face was more serious than usual. Amelia, I have something important to discuss with you. He handed me a document. It was a copy of a property deed. What is this? I asked, confused. It's the deed to the house you lived in with Kevin. What do you mean? I thought it was being repossessed. It was. I bought it from the bank. My eyes widened in shock. Dad, why would you do that? I wanted nothing to do with that place. Calm down and listen. He said. I didn't do it for him. I did it for you. He explained that under marital law, assets and debts acquired during the marriage are shared. I could have been held partially responsible for the mortgage debt. The divorce is final, but the debt was incurred before. The lawyer said it was a gray area that could lead to future legal battles. I wanted to eliminate that possibility. So, you bought the house to settle the debt? And now, it's yours. He handed me another document. It was a transfer of title. On it, my name, Amelia Peterson, was listed as a sole owner. Tears welled in my eyes. Dad, why? Why would you do all this for me? Because you are my daughter. He said, the simple words carrying immense weight. I don't want you to start your new life feeling defeated. I want you to know that you lost nothing. In fact, you gained everything back. And you did it rightfully. I hugged him tightly, sobbing like a child. This was my father's love vast, quiet, but absolute in its protection. He hadn't just pulled me from hell. He had given me a solid foundation upon which to rebuild. What about them? I asked. Where will they go? That, my father said, is for you to decide. You are the owner of the house now. You have every right to let them stay, or to have them removed. He was handing the final power to me. It wasn't just about a house. It was about deciding the fate of the 3 people who had hurt me so deeply, who had laughed at my pain. What would I do? Would I take my revenge and throw them out onto the street? Or would I show mercy? This was a final test of my character, a test to prove whether I had truly healed and moved beyond the pain. My answer would define not only their future, but my own. The news that I was now the sole and legal owner of their home sent a shockwave through the Ashford family. I didn't tell them. My lawyer sent a formal notice, informing them of the change in ownership and giving them the legally required time to vacate the property. Their reaction was predictable. Kevin, already at rock bottom, became even more unhinged. He left a string of hateful, screaming voicemails on my phone from a blocked number. You're a demon. You planned this all along, didn't you? To take everything from me. I listened to them with an empty heart. He would never take responsibility. Eleanor and Jessica, however, changed their tune from aggression to pathetic pleading. They called me, crying, begging for mercy. Amelia, dear, please don't throw us out. Where will we go? Amy, we were family once. How can you be so cruel? Their words stirred no pity, only the memory of their smirking faces as I lay on the floor. I took a few days to think, not about what to do with them, but about what to do with myself. What was my goal now? Was it revenge? To watch them burn? Or was it to start my own life in peace, free from the chains of the past? I thought of my father. He never used brute force. He used intelligence, the law, and righteousness. His actions were decisive, but they weren't bullying. He simply ripped their masks off and let karma do the rest. Now, it was my turn to show him I had learned his lesson. I decided to drive to the house myself, alone. I needed to face them not as a victim, but as the one in control. When I arrived, the once perfect lawn was overgrown. Jessica answered the door, her face a mask of shock and suspicion. What do you want? She asked. I'm here to speak with everyone. As the owner of the house, I replied, my voice steady and firm. I walked into the home that had once been my prison. Kevin was slumped on the sofa, disheveled and smelling of stale whiskey. Eleanor was weeping beside him. They all looked up at me with the eyes of the utterly defeated. I'm here to tell you my decision, I began, cutting through the heavy silence. They waited for their sentence. I am not going to throw you out of this house. They stared in disbelief. Kevin actually sat up straighter. However, I continued, I'm not letting you live here for free. I placed a document on the coffee table. It was a formal lease agreement. I am offering to rent this house to you for half the market rate, but you will pay on time, every month, and you will maintain the property. What? Jessica shrieked. You want us to pay rent to live in our own house? It's not your house anymore. I said calmly. It's my house. This is the most mercy I can offer. You can either accept the terms, or you can find somewhere else to live. The choice is yours. I was giving them an option, not an order. A chance to save face, to stay in their gilded cage, but at the cost of accepting responsibility. Where are we supposed to get the money for rent? Eleanor wailed. Kevin is unemployed. We have no income. That is something you will have to figure out for yourselves, I said, looking from one to the other. Everyone, at some point, has to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. I looked directly at Kevin. As for you, I will not interfere with the embezzlement case. You broke the law. You will face the consequences. That is justice. As for your gambling debts, you created them. You will repay them. I will not help you. I turned to Jessica. As for you, if you want to afford rent, it's time to get a job. Any honest job. It won't be as comfortable as doing nothing, but it's the only way you'll keep a roof over your head. Finally, I looked at Eleanor. And for you, if your son cannot provide and your daughter will not work, perhaps it's time to use your own savings and learn to live more modestly. That is what adults do when they face hardship. My words were a mirror, reflecting their own actions and attitudes back at them. This wasn't revenge. It was a lesson in accountability. I was forcing them to grow up. It was a cruel kindness. I stood up. I'm giving you 3 days to decide. If you agree, sign the lease and have it sent to my lawyer. If not, I expect you to be out by the end of the month. I have nothing more to say. Goodbye. I turned and walked out of that house. And this time, I didn't feel like I was escaping. I felt light, free, as if I'd just severed the final chain binding me to my past. I wasn't a winner, but I was liberated. I had given them a chance. But in doing so, I had given myself true freedom. Whatever they chose, it was no longer my problem. My life was finally, truly, beginning. 3 days later, my lawyer called to inform me that he had received the signed lease agreement. They had chosen to accept my terms, to remain in their gilded cage, even if it meant swallowing their pride. It didn't surprise me. My life moved forward. I threw myself into teaching and started volunteering on weekends with a group that brought art and reading programs to underserved communities. Seeing the joy on those children's faces filled a part of my soul I didn't know was empty. True happiness, I discovered, came from giving, not from having. I had no further contact with the Ashfords, except for the monthly reports from my lawyer about the rent. For the first 2 months, they paid on time. Then it was late. By the 4th month, it stopped completely. My lawyer advised we could begin eviction proceedings, but I told him to wait. I wanted to see what they would do when pushed to the absolute edge. One day, as I was leaving school, I saw a familiar figure waiting by the gate. It was Eleanor. She looked like a different person. Her expensive clothes were worn and faded, her face gaunt and stripped of its makeup. She looked like any other tired, elderly woman facing hard times. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward and tried to fall to her knees. Miss Amelia, please, you have to help me. I was mortified and quickly pulled her up. Please, don't do this. Get up. Let's go talk somewhere. I led her to a small, quiet coffee shop nearby, with tears streaming down her face. She told me everything. Their savings were gone. Kevin was still drinking, refusing to do anything but wallow in self-pity. Jessica had tried to find work but was too proud to take the service jobs she was offered. They had no money for food, let alone rent. I know I was terrible to you, she sobbed. I was a fool, but I have no one left. Please, give us one more chance. I'll do anything. I listened silently. The anger and hatred were gone. I just saw a woman who had built her life on a foundation of sand, and now the tide had come in. Her suffering was a direct result of her own flawed values. Eleanor, I said, my voice gentle but firm, I can't just give you money. Her face fell. Doing that would be like giving you more poison. It doesn't solve the problem. It just enables it. She looked down, defeated. But I can help you. In my own way. Will you accept my help? She nodded numbly. I took a pen and a napkin and wrote down 2 phone numbers and an address. This first number, I said, pointing, is a friend of mine who owns a restaurant. He needs a dishwasher and a server. Tell Jessica to call him. If she's willing to work, he'll give her a chance. Eleanor stared at the number. The thought of her precious daughter washing dishes clearly a shock. This second number is for a free addiction and mental health counseling center. Talk to Kevin. If he ever wants to get his life back, this is his only path. And this address, it's a community center for seniors. They have free meals, activities, and companionship. If you're feeling alone, you should go. I wasn't giving them money. I was giving them tools. A fishing rod instead of a fish. A chance to work. A chance to heal. A chance to find a new community. It was the last, and most meaningful, lesson I could offer them. As for the back rent, I will forgive it, I said, and I will give you 3 more months. After that, if you still cannot pay, you will have to leave, because I am selling the house, and I am donating all of the money to an orphanage. I had a plan. I would not keep that tainted property. I would transform its dark history into a bright future for others, and in doing so, I would break the cycle of karma for good. Eleanor took the napkin with a trembling hand. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of disappointment, shame, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of understanding. Thank you, Amelia, she whispered. And then she left. I watched her hunched figure walk away. I didn't know what path they would choose, but it was no longer my story to write. I had done my part. I was, at last, truly and completely free. The laughter of children filled the classroom. I stood at the front, watching my first graders diligently coloring, and a genuine smile spread across my face. This was my world, my joy, the place I felt most alive. My life had returned to a beautiful, simple peace. I learned, one last time from my lawyer, what became of the Ashfords. They never used the resources I gave them. When the final 3 months were up, they moved out of the house quietly, disappearing without a trace. No one knew where they went. They had simply vanished from the world I inhabited. True to my word, I sold the house. Every last dollar was donated to a foundation supporting orphanages and underfunded rural schools. The act felt like a final purification, washing away the last stains of a painful past. I had turned a symbol of my suffering into a source of hope for others. It was the perfect end to that chapter. My relationship with my father grew even stronger. We talked more. About small things. About daily life. He never mentioned Kevin or his family again, as if they had been erased from his memory. He was just happy to have his daughter back, stronger and more joyful than before. One afternoon, as I was packing up to leave school, the principal stopped me. "Amy, an old friend of yours is here to see you. He's waiting in your classroom." Puzzled, I walked back to my room and opened the door. A man stood with his back to me, looking at the children's artwork on the wall. When he heard the door, he turned around, a warm smile on his face. "Amy, remember me?" My heart skipped a beat. It was Nate, Captain Nathan Riley, son of my father's best friend. We had been inseparable as kids on the base. Before his family was reassigned, he was my first childhood crush, and I hadn't seen him in 15 years. "Nate," I exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" "I just got transferred back to D.C. I stopped by to see your dad, and he told me where you were teaching. I had to come say hi." We talked for a long time, catching up. He was still the same kind, gentle, and sincere person I remembered. His eyes held only warmth, no pity, though I knew my father had surely told him the broad strokes of my story. "Are you free for dinner tonight?" he asked. A celebration of a reunion. I hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. I'd love that. I didn't know where this would lead. Maybe just a renewed friendship. Maybe something more. But I wasn't afraid to open my heart again. My past had taught me that I was worthy of a good love, one built on a foundation of mutual respect. As we walked out of the school, I glanced across the street and saw a familiar black SUV. My father was behind the wheel. He didn't get out. He just watched from a distance. When our eyes met, he gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod, and the corner of his mouth lifted into the rarest of sights, a gentle smile. Then, he slowly drove away, leaving me to walk my own path. I understood completely. My protector had done his job. He had guided me through the storm and built a wall of honor around me, until I could stand strong on my own. Now, he was letting go, trusting me to fly. The real wall of honor, I finally realized, wasn't built around me. It was built inside of me. It was a wall of strength, of dignity,